Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Moises, and on today's episode of my show, we're gonna review the next episode in the Assassination of Gianni Versace, the episode titled Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So let's get right to it. So the episode starts off in Milan in 1995, and we immediately see that there's a discussion going on between Donatella Versace, Gianni Versace, and Ricky Martin, also known as Antonio. And Gianni Versace is saying how he wants to do an interview, and he wants to do an interview with this magazine called The Advocate, which is a gay magazine. And Donatella Versace's like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're doing an interview? Everything has to go through me. I'm the one in charge of publicity. So Ricky Martin butts in and says, well, so what would you advise? To which Donatella replies, so this is your idea. I see what's going on. And we see Donatella accuse Ricky Martin of putting himself before the company. He's like, yeah, you've benefited from this company, but now you want recognition. It's like, it's not enough that you live in great comfort. It's like you want to be known as Versace's lover. And then Gianni jumps in and he's like, enough with this. This is my idea. I'm the one that wants to do this, and, end of discussion. So then we see Donatella try to reason with Versace in a much calmer tone. She says to him, the rock stars, the royalty, the movie stars, the actors, we might lose them if they find out that, you are a gay designer. It happened before. It happened to Perry Ellis. And then she goes on and tells a story about how Perry Ellis couldn't even bow down at one of his shows, and he had to have his assistants help him bow down and come back up. You don't know how ugly the world can be, she says. From there, we cut to San Diego, and they show us Andrew Cunanan, and they show us Andrew sitting in a chair, and it looks like he's like shooting up drugs. I don't know if it's meth or cocaine or heroin, but it's something that involves syringes. And they show us him on the phone, and he's talking to American Express and basically trying to charm his way into having a line of credit extended for him to go to Minneapolis so he can repay back American Express. And he gives them this long explanation and story, and he convinces them. So at the 11-minute mark is when Jeffrey Trail is revealed in this episode, played by Wittrock. And we see him working in some kind of, some kind of factory. I don't know what they're doing there, but it's obviously a job that's beneath him. And he starts having a conversation with one of his coworkers. He tells the coworker, and I was an officer. And then the guy's like, you're an officer? And what are you doing here? And then that kind of triggers Jeff Trails a bit, and he's like, I chose to leave, I chose to be here. And, it makes sense, but the other guy's not really buying it. It's like, who would leave, being an officer in the Navy to work at this, factory? In his mind, he's thinking that. And he kind of sets him off. He pisses him off. So then we see Jeff get a message by one of his coworkers saying, Andrew called. He says to meet him at the airport. And Jeff looks like really mad that he got that message at work. It's like, you're invading my work life. It's like, God, this guy's a psycho. So then they show us the airport, and they show David and Jeff meeting at the airport, and they speak among each other, and then they're like, do you even like him? Do you even like Andrew? Like, why is he even coming here? I mean, did you invite him? And they're like, no, he just like came on his own. And so they're kind of perplexed, like why he invited himself and created this like whole fantasy weekend for the three of them without them even, agreeing to it. It is crazy. And it almost breaks my heart, because when Andrew arrives, he's like so enthusiastic and happy, and he's like, oh, it's the three amigos. We're gonna have so much fun. And he seems like genuinely like happy, to see them. And he's like, it's gonna be just like old times. And then Jeff is like, it's not going to be like old times. Then both Jeff and David go ahead and tell Andrew that, they're going to be really busy this weekend, and they're really not going to be able to hang out. And it just like shocks, Andrew. And now Jeff says to Andrew, I'm not going to be able to hang out with you tonight, after everything you've done. And Andrew's like, what? What did I do? And then he brings up the postcard. Apparently, Andrew sent a postcard to Jeff's dad's house. And it kind of like, I don't know if it outed him, but it was very close to outing him, and that's just not cool. We then cut to David's apartment, and in just like a spontaneous manner, Andrew proposes to David, and he gives him this like Rolex watch, and he's like, I want you to marry me. And David's like, no, first of all, we can't get married, it's not legal. And he's like, well, we'll call it a commitment ceremony. And he's like, it's not the term, it's you. He says it's the idea of you and me together that he can't grasp. And Andrew's reaction to that is, think about it. Think about it for the next few days. And then he starts again with the lies, saying he got a new condo in San Francisco. And Andrew says that he just needs someone to be a new person for. So we then cut to a club scene. This club scene, we meet David's boss, Linda, you know, the one that found him dead in the apartment. And I was like, oh, it's so weird if your boss would show up. But I guess they were really close, so then that changes everything. If they're like friends, obviously it makes sense. We see Andrew meet Linda, and he starts off with his lies again, saying that he's working, you know, on the Titanic movie down in Mexico. And then he says, you know, that he's somebody very close to David. He gave him a watch that's $10,000 after all. You know, he's basically more than just a friend. He's basically a fiance. Now, the next morning, David confronts Andrew and says, you know, I know that you're lying. You don't have a condo in San Francisco. You're not working on the Titanic movie. And I can't accept this watch. You know, I'm not ready for marriage. And he basically says, you know, it's not gonna happen. And he actually puts it perfectly. I can't put it any other way. He's just like, this isn't real. This is just another crazy story of yours. We then see Andrew break into Jeff's house. And by break in, I mean he has the keys and he goes in very easily because Jeff gave him the keys to his apartment. He said you could spend the night there. That was like the dumbest thing Jeff did. It's like you give him the keys to your apartment and you have a gun in there. And you guys know what happens. You know, he goes in there, he rummages through his closet, he finds a VHS tape, and he puts it into the VCR and he watches it. And it's like an interview of all these like homophobic Navy guys saying, you know, gays in the military are bad and they shouldn't be allowed at all in the military service. It then shows an interview of a guy in like a silhouette and his voice is distorted, who's obviously Jeff, telling a story about he's gay in the military and how he saved a guy from being beat to death, a guy that was suspected of being gay, and that he wishes he never did that. Because he saved that guy, everybody then thought he was gay, and then that made his life a living hell. He actually regrets saving that gay guy's life. And from there, we're transported to November of 1995 to that exact moment when the beating was happening. They show Jeff, you know, telling everybody, hey, stop beating him up. There it starts getting out that there's this guy who's like a snitch, and he's gonna snitch on all the closeted gay men that are in the Navy, and he's not gonna give names, but he's gonna give the tattoo descriptions of the guys that are gay. And to that, Jeff starts freaking out because of that, and he actually starts considering ripping off his tattoo or scraping off his tattoo, as gross as that sounds. But I mean, that's kind of dumb, because if you start scraping off your tattoo and then people are going to see a big scab that you tried to scrape it off, that's like saying, hey, I'm gay, I'm gay. They then show us a meeting with Jeff and his superiors, and they give him this thing called the Gay Conduct Book. And I'm like, wow, was this real? Because it's like, I can't believe something like that was real. It looks so fake, but it's real. It's kind of like what Elon Musk said about that rocket. So obviously the thought of being, you know, outed is really stressing Jeff out, and he actually considers committing suicide. So he gets his most beautiful Navy outfit. He dresses like a pretty boy, and then he tries to commit suicide, but he fails. I guess after the failed suicide attempt, Jeff realizes if you can't beat him, join them. And so he goes full gay, and he goes to this gay bar called Flicks. And as he's walking into the bar, he's like overtaken by all the super gayness, and he sees like a go-go dancer, and he starts like, you know, I guess you can't say undressing him with his eyes because he was already undressed, but Andrew's there at that same bar, and that's where they make first contact. And Andrew says to him, first time? You just knew you needed to be here, huh? And he's like totally right. He's very good at reading people. That's how these psychos are. So Andrew gets him really drunk over the night, and they bond together, and he says to him, you know, you're never gonna forget me, or something like that, and that's for sure. And then they also show us Jeff and Andrew talking about CBS News, and Jeff wants to actually interview for the CBS News to talk about what it's like being gay in the military. And Andrew's like, are you crazy? You know, you're gonna be thrown out of the military, or they could find out, you could be in danger. And he's totally right. But Jeff says it's something he has to do. It feels like, you know, it's something he must do, even with all the danger associated with it. And from there, we cut to Jeff being interviewed, or about to be interviewed, juxtaposed with Gianni Versace being interviewed by the advocate. You know, so they put these things side by side so we can see, you know, it doesn't matter if you're like a normal gay or a super rich, glamorous gay. It's like the struggle is there. It's real. And just to make things clear, I'm one of the glamorous gays, okay? We then jump to April of 1997, the day of Jeff's murder. And this is my favorite scene in the episode. And so in this scene, you know, Andrew and Jeff get into an argument. And Jeff is mad because Andrew went through his stuff and he touched his uniform, and he talks about honor and how Andrew has no honor. And Andrew even says to him, you know, why do you even want to go back into the military? They didn't want you. You know, why would you want to go back to that? Then Andrew says something really mean. He's nothing but a washed up queer in a shitty job. So that was pretty harsh. Jeff is calling Andrew a liar, and Andrew has like this God complex. And he says to him, you know, Jeff, I saved you. To which Jeff replies, no, you destroyed me. What I like about their fight is that Andrew has finally met his match, because Jeff is his equal mentally, physically. So, you know, he's not going to be pushed around. And so Jeff is like mad, and you can almost see that like he could beat Andrew up if he really wanted to. He's that strong. In my mind, I'm saying, yes, this is a fair fight. You know, Andrew has a real contender to fight with. But nothing really happened in the apartment, and Andrew just ends up leaving. And he leaves and goes back to David's apartment. And while he's at David's apartment, he calls Jeff and says, you know, I took your gun. To which Jeff flips out and says, I'm gonna come get my gun immediately. And he says to Andrew, I'm done with you. Did you hear me? I am done with you. And as you guys know, Andrew gets a hammer and hits Jeff in the head and kills him that way. And in this episode, it's juxtaposed with the birth of, I think, Jeff's niece or nephew. Final shot is just of a beautiful white navy hat on top of this nice box, and then we fade to black. So I really like this episode because I got to see the different perspectives, you know, of the same moment. Like, you know, like that very last scene where Jeff is coming into the building. We got to see it from a different perspective this time, even though we had seen it in the previous episode. So I really like TV shows and shows that do that, because it's cool to see, you know, everybody, because everybody's reality is kind of different. And I also like that we got to see Donatella Versace and Ricky Martin and Gianni, even though it was really not that much. It was only like snippets here and there, but I did like seeing that too. So what can I say, guys? It was another episode of good television, plain and simple. This week's video was a day late because I had to go to the DMV. I actually made a video about that, but that'll come out in a few weeks. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I'm Moises Amaya, and thanks for coming to my channel. Bye, guys.